The Magic force a Game 7, and the Mavericks bounce the Clippers. Plus, what to watch for in Game 1 of Timberwolves-Nuggets? That's all next on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. It's always free. It's never behind a paywall. Locked On NBA also has a YouTube channel. If you want to watch the show, subscribe to the audio and video feeds so you never miss any of the NBA coverage, all the various channels of Locked On NBA, the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to talk a little bit more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading cool playing pieces and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go, now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. I'm Andy Kamenetzky, co-host of Locked On Lakers. She's Camille Monae, co-host of Locked On Bucks, also the host of the Technical Foul podcast. And I guess we should start with a Game 7, Camille, because Game 7s are always awesome. Sound good?
Absolutely.
The Magic force a Game 7. We're going back to Cleveland on Sunday. 103-96 win over the Cavs. Paolo Banchero, 27 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Franz Wagner, 26 points, went to the line 11 times, made all 11. Jalen Suggs, 22, 6, and 4. And then you have Donovan Mitchell putting up 50 for the Cavs and not getting a whole lot of help beyond that. Darius Garland, 21, and nobody else gets more than 10. That's got to be frustrating for Donovan Mitchell.
I mean, by the fourth quarter, the offense felt like give Donovan Mitchell the ball and just move out his way. Like, let's just see what he can cook. I mean, Donovan Mitchell literally scored every single fourth quarter point for the Cavs. He was 7 of 13 from the field. The rest of the team was 0 for 6. Meaning, I mean, he got double the shot attempts than any other part, like the rest of his team. Not just one other person, but the entire team. It was the Donovan Mitchell show the whole second half, but the fourth quarter was really special. It's unfortunate for Cav fans and the Cavaliers that it just wasn't enough. Like, Donovan Mitchell's best night was not enough.
Yeah, you cannot. If you're the Cavs, you can't waste a night like that.
Right.
Like, that is a truly special night. Like, I tweeted out at Cam Brothers, I was picturing Donovan Mitchell at, like, in the locker room after the game, that scene in Coming to America where Eddie Murphy is the barber. And, you know, that he's telling him that he's being told Joe Louis lost to Rocky Marciano and that he never met Frank Sinatra. And he's like, bleep you, bleep you, bleep you. Who's next? Like, I'm picturing Donovan Mitchell. That's his dynamic in that locker room. Other than maybe he doesn't bleep you to Darius Garland, but everyone else, it's bleep you, bleep you, bleep you. Who's next?
I mean, look at the front court production in this particular game. Like, Evan Mobley is 1 of 5, 3 points. They had the Morris brother, Marcus Morris, 1 of 7, 2 points. The two of them were really big in that Game 5 victory. So, like, the front court didn't give you too much. You mentioned Garland gave you some, but, like, other than that, I mean, there weren't a lot of shot attempts spread amongst the team. It really was a Donovan Mitchell game. And I got to say this as we talk about Donovan, but, like, the Magic winning mean I keep getting to hear that Orlando Magic. I'm a fan of that song, so I'm happy for the Magic. I mean, this is big for them as well. This young trio of guys they have with Suggs, with Paolo is just so fun to watch. And then Franz, like, that trio is doing some things that we haven't seen done since the young Thunder teams with KD and Russ and James Harden. Like, wasn't there the third trio, 22 years or younger, to score at least 20 points a game? Like, every player scoring at least 20. Like, they were hooping tonight.
Yeah, they're such an unusual team, the Magic, because, like, they're structured with all this front court playmaking and scoring. And, you know, Jalen Suggs had a really nice night scoring tonight, but he's often more defense first. Like, I imagine they're a really unusual team to scout for and like try to prepare for, because they're kind of counterintuitive to a lot of other teams. But, like, it'll be interesting too. Obviously Game 7 goes back to Cleveland. Cleveland's way more experienced than them in terms of just being in the league, but also the playoffs. But Orlando has been, they've lost all 3 road games, but the losses keep getting closer. They went from 14 to 10 to 1. So maybe they're just getting more and more used to the idea of the playoffs and the environment and then playing on the road. But I'm really curious to see how they react to an elimination setting on the road. I don't know who on this team has been through this before, but like Gary Harris may have to sit down and talk with some kids, or Joe Ingles. There can't be many of them.
No, it's not that many on this team. And the game 7 is going to be so interesting too, because like you mentioned, Orlando has not won on the road yet. And now they're faced to win their first road game of the series in an elimination game where it's like, it's do or die at this point. And then on top of that too, I wonder on the Cavalier side, because Donovan Mitchell had a crazy 50 ball tonight, but we saw how hurt, like he was gutting through tonight. Like he was laboring through. And it seemed to me like he was kind of like, I want to get this done. Like I want this series over as quickly as possible. So I'm going to do what I can do, but instead it's extended. So like come Sunday, I do wonder about the legs for the Cleveland Cavaliers, because if no one else can score outside of Donovan, like it's going to be a long night, because I don't know how much more he has left in the tank.
Well, you mentioned too the lack of scoring that they got from the front court, and Evan Mobley in particular. If Jared Allen can't play because he was not able to go in this game, then it really starts becoming interesting. Like, do you have to lean again that far into the Donovan Mitchell show, or can you get a true breakout game from Darius Garland? Can Max Strus have a night where he hits 4 threes? Like something like that. Like they need other guys. Like you cannot expect, as great as Donovan Mitchell can be, it is not fair to put all of that in his lap, especially after they can all look around and be like, man, we let him down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do wonder too, if we're going to see Orlando stick with this jumbo lineup. Like they present, like you mentioned, how out of a team Orlando is. Like outside of Jalen, Suggs, everybody else who they started was at least 6'10". So I think that also helped affect that 3-point shooting for the Cavaliers. They just didn't get that many good looks. And the ones that they did get, they just weren't able to knock them down. It was just so interesting given the fact that Orlando was so big, but they gave up so many points in the paint.
Yeah. I mean, Jonathan Isaac is a monster defensively, and he can play all over the court. You got Wendell Carter Jr. out there. It is it's borderline 4 power forwards and centers and a guard. Like it's like Paolo Banchero is in some ways, or like Wagner, like the 2 guard. I don't even know which one would be technically the 2 or technically the 3, but they are huge, and I wouldn't say they're necessarily quick, but like they're mobile enough, and they're so long and disruptive. You're right, and that may have had a big role in. I mean, the offense in the first half for both these teams was ugly.
Stuck.
Like, like Cleveland, I think missed 11 threes in a row. I'm not gonna lie, the first half I was drifting off a few times. Like I was like, this is so ugly. It's not entertaining. Like I woke up more in the second half. The second half got better, and down the stretch it was really fun.
Yeah.
But that first half, man, that was really not good.
Yeah, it was a lot of bricks. It was like the rainmaker. It was a lot of that happening in the first half of this game, but second half definitely picked up, especially when I saw like Cole he had like this crazy cross spin into like this scoop, acrobatic, awkward layup. I was like, okay, we started.
He had a nice fourth quarter, Cole Anthony.
Yes, he did. It was just a really fun game down the stretch. I definitely agree at the beginning. I was like, I don't know what we're getting ourselves into with this game, but that's how this series has been for the most part as well. It's been kind of like the unsung, untalked about series of the first round so far, but ironically enough, this is the one that's going 7.
Yeah, and it's gonna have a spotlight to itself. It should be really entertaining. I'm really interested to see how this young Magic team reacts. I mean, either way, if they lose, they're ahead of schedule. I mean, like they're moving in a really, really nice direction. Like they're going to be a team that you better get your wins off them now, because they're going to be really difficult to make that happen moving forward. Coming up next, the Mavericks close out the Clippers. Brilliant performance from Kyrie Irving. And where do the Clippers go from here? Talk about that coming up next.
All right, y'all, real quick, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. You're probably like, Camille, flag on a play. We have already heard Andy talk about that. But listen, there is just so much good stuff in this game. I got to tell you a bit more. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers you can trade with a friend to compete for albums, for big prizes. You can get cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or you heist their vaults, because sometimes your friends got, y'all. So use those emojis. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games too, like digging for treasure or a robot panko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. So there's always something fun to discover Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
Okay, the Dallas Mavericks move on to the second round. They close out the Clippers in 6, 114-101 in Dallas. Kyrie Irving, absolute killer in the second half of this game. He finishes with 30 points, 11 of 19 from the field. Luka Doncic, 28 points, 9 of 26 from the field, but he did get to the line 11 times, 13 assists, 7 rebounds. PJ Washington, who, my God, this man loves being in the playoffs. Like, he is playing like somebody who's like freed from the prison that is the Charlotte Hornets organization. 14 points. He hit 4 threes. Daniel Gafford, 13 points. And before we get to the Clippers and just where do they go from here, because it feels like we're watching this movie with them over and over. What were your thoughts on the Mavericks, seeing them close out this series in pretty convincing fashion?
I wasn't sure at first here, because this is a game coming into it where it's like Dallas has been in this position before. Was it 2021 when the Mavs had a 3-2 lead and it's like, hey, you win game 6, you got the series, but the Clippers end up winning the next 2 games. Dallas goes home. I didn't think that Dallas was going to let that go down again in this situation. In the first half, I was like, the first quarter, Mavs were up big. I'm like, okay, like an 8-point lead. Like, okay, cool. But then the Clips came back, tied it up going into halftime. And I'm like, oh, now they're making it interesting. But when the Mavs blew the doors off to start the third and you saw Kyrie starting to get going, Luka stayed taking his shots, trying to find a way to affect the game. And he was able to. At that point, I was like, I think the Mavericks are going to run away with this one. And once Kyrie hit that three in the corner over PJ, then when he got fouled, I said, that's it. That's it. The Mavs got this one in the bag. Yeah,
Kyrie, he finished with 30 points. I didn't realize this. Like, I knew he was hot in the second half, but I was just looking up his stats. 28 of his 30 were in the second half.
Yes.
I didn't realize until literally real time just now, like, oh my God, he was that good in the second half. He absolutely took over. He was making just impossible shot after impossible shot. It's funny, like this season for Kyrie, like this series, this game, it's like a reminder of why fans in the league have been frustrated and exasperated and even angry at times with Kyrie, because it's not even like just the stuff he was saying or doing, which in some cases were like problematic. It's like, you're so good. He's so good, and he makes the game like beautiful and entertaining, like this joy to watch. He's so creative and clever and talented. And it's like, he can have his own personality. He can have his own viewpoints. Like, everybody has their own perspectives, but it's like he was taking himself out of the game and making himself unreliable. And it's like, you don't need this. We don't need this, because man, when he's on, Camille, he's incredible. He's incredible.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. Yeah. The finishing, like I in my lifetime, I haven't seen somebody with the finishes like that. Like my Uncle Tony's be like, you need to look up Rod Strickland if you want to talk about some finishing here. Like that's where Kai got it from. But I mean, the influence, just watching him play, like you mentioned how he went crazy in the second half. Like he was 1 of 6 in the first half, 0 for 2 from 3. Like cold. And the game was still tied at that point. Luka was 0 for 7 from 3 at that point. Like this team did not have any quit. In Dallas, like they have a lot of size as well. They have so much athleticism and defense around Kyrie and Luka. And that's exactly what this team needed to really be a serious contender, especially in the West, where it's super tough to make it out of a playoff round. Like
Tell me about it.
This is a team that is well constructed around their 2 stars now.
Yeah, and I think too, like once you start putting guys like Gafford and Washington and Derek Jones Jr. around Kyrie and Luka, it gives them a support system defensively, but also I think it raises their own onus to be the best versions of themselves defensively. Because before, Luka and Kyrie, whether separately or together, have not been good enough defensively, but like the teams around them weren't good enough either. So it gave them a bit of a built-in excuse if they're willing to take it. But these teams around them now, it's like, okay, you've got some infrastructure defensively. We need you to bring something to the table. And like, if you want to go to these places that Luka and Kyrie can guide them, there's like a baseline of defense that has to be played. And to their credit, like people who watch the Mavericks closely say this is the best defensive season of his career. Kyrie in the games that I watched in this series was quite good defensively. Yeah. They're a good team. They're a team that you won't want to face.
No. And part of it too is because like they have the defense, but they still have 2 killers in the half court. Like, and that's what happens in the playoffs, what you need, because the game does slow down at some point. Although the Mavs picking up the pace in the third is what I really thought helped swing the game for him. Jason Kidd was talking about that at halftime. Like the reason that the second quarter didn't go our way is because we were walking with the ball too much. We need to push the pace. And you saw them doing that in that third quarter. And when you have skilled passers like Kyrie and Luka, like we know that they can get buckets, but they also have really good vision as well, especially Luka. It's a difficult combination to try to beat. And on top of that as well, just thinking about the Mavericks, like they even finished this game with Maxi Kleber injuring himself early on in the game. So they lost the backup big who, they get some tick out of. So they were able to find a way to get past that. And I hope that he is okay because that fall looked crazy. Derek Lively also had a fall, like where he kind of like did a lunge into the splits. I just was like, my body was hurting for him. Like that's a lot of pressure. So I hope that Kleber is all right too, because their next matchup against the Thunder is going to need all hands on deck.
Speaking of hurt bodies and I guess now hurt feelings, the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard unable to finish out this series, was not a good closeout game for Paul George or James Harden. Where do the Clippers go from here? Because like they've already extended Kawhi Leonard in what everybody knew was a risky move, but it's part of this all-in period. Paul George has not signed an extension, but by all reports, the Clippers want him to return. They gave up all this stuff to get James Harden. Like they may have no choice but to run this thing back and pay out the nose to do it. Like if Paul George leaves, they're going to have no way to replace him, I don't think.
No, I don't believe so either. And it's difficult, right? Because you mentioned that we cover Bucks and Lakers, and today the Bucks had an exit interview with Giannis, and he was talking about him trying to come back from this injury to play and how frustrating it was for his body, where his mind is like, I need to be out here, but his body wouldn't allow him to. And I think about Kawhi with that as well. Like Kawhi had a regular season where we saw him more than we have in years, and he looked good. Unfortunately, he gets injured towards the end of the season. We see him in game 3. He does not look right. And this is the guy who just got the extension. Like, we all know that when Kawhi is healthy, he is a game changer. It's just that when we get to this time of the year, it just seems like there's always something. And it's not like I'm saying it's his fault or anything like that. It's just an unfortunate side effect of the wear and tear of the long NBA season. So, like, where do you go when your key cornerstone guy hasn't been able to play in the playoffs for you consistently during his time there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're in a really interesting spot right now because, you know, like the Lakers, like the Bucks, they've made a lot of big all-in moves, and you know, the Clippers are very much in for a penny, in for a pound territory right now. Like, I don't know what they can do other than throw whatever money Paul George wants to stay, re-sign James Harden, and just hope that there is a season where all 3 of those guys manage to stay healthy, because there was a period where it did look pretty good, but it's, you know, it's going to be painful for them too. Like, next series, let's just say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Thunder advance to the Western Conference Finals. You know, them not winning in a year where Shai maybe gets to the Western Conference Finals or the Finals in a year where I think he's going to end up second in MVP voting. Like, I don't blame them for making the Paul George trade, because it was part of the Kawhi Leonard trade, and I think every GM in the league would have done it, man. But seeing Shai perform like that, it's got to hurt. Even if it wasn't a bad move, it still has to hurt.
Yeah, because it hasn't worked out the way you thought it would. Like, it's one of those things where you envision it. You're like, to pair Kawhi and Paul George for a franchise that has been starving, you know, for a chance to even appear in the NBA Finals. Like this, it's tough. It's tough when it doesn't work out and you're looking at all the situations that led into it, and you're just like, health. It keeps coming down to health over and over again. And then you look at the surrounding cast around Kawhi, around Paul George. You mentioned James Harden, who looked like he injured his hand during this game because he wasn't even looking for his shot most of the third quarter into the fourth. You got Russ coming off the bench, and Russ wasn't that great in this series outside of, I think, the first game. They needed more spacing. So, like, when you're thinking of the Clippers, like, how can we get a little bit more of athleticism and shooting on this team, which, I mean, most teams are looking for athleticism and shooting.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Speaking, though, of athleticism and shooting and quality teams, Timberwolves-Nuggets. That is Saturday, game 1, first of the second round in the Western Conference. What are we looking for? We'll explain coming up next.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and to level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, plus more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what it is that you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and to bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Okay, so tonight, Saturday, we've got game 1 against the Timberwolves and the defending champion Denver Nuggets. What stands out to you in terms of the things that you're looking for in that series? Like, what jumps out at you when you think about the matchups?
Man, just the arrival of superstars like Nikola Jokic, for him to be a back-to-back MVP, like, or not back-to-back, but two-time MVP, who's probably getting his third one this year, and thinking about on the other side with Anthony Edwards and his ascension, like, it's putting two teams that might not get talked about because of their markets as much. And for Minnesota, they just haven't been winning as much. They're getting a chance to be broadcast to the world, and what I think is going to be a really, really exciting series. I'm really curious to see if all of the bigs that Minnesota have, with Naz Reid coming off the bench and Cat and Rudy, how they're going to be able to try to neutralize the Joker. And just thinking about the different matchups, like, who's going to be checking Ant? Who's going to be checking Jamal Murray? Like, both of these teams have some interesting wing options as well. Like, the matchup should be really interesting. What about you?
Okay, well, I'm going to get to all those matchups in a second, but I thought you raised something really interesting with Ant's ascension, because like Joker is, I agree. I think he's going to end up getting his third MVP. I think he's the best player in the league,
Same.
but he's not interested in being a face of the league that way. Like, you know, he clearly loves the game. You can't be that great if you don't care about your craft to the level that he does. But like, it's shocking to see him do these commercials with Peyton Watson or like dressing as Gru.
That one caught me off guard.
Yeah, and it's hilarious, and he's really funny in the commercial.
Yeah.
But like, and he didn't seem like he was doing it begrudgingly, but it's not something that he, by any accounts, seeks out. Ant wants to be a face of the league. Like, he wants that. And I think he'd be great for it. Like, he's got swag and charisma and personality, like, to burn and to spare. He's got it all. Like, in Hustle, actually, a year or so ago. Well, a year or so ago,
fantastic.
We had on our podcast on Locked On Lakers, the film critic Amy Nicholson. She's a critic for the New York Times, but she's a massive Laker fan. And we had her on around the time of LeBron's Space Jam reboot. And we wanted to talk with her about the Lakers, but also just LeBron's entertainment career in general and just what she thought of it so far. And we ended up talking about Hustle. She didn't realize, because Ant was a rookie that year, and you know, she knew who Anthony Edwards was, but she didn't know him by face. She did not realize that was Anthony Edwards. She just thought he was a really good actor.
Really?
Like, yeah, like when she learned that was Anthony Edwards, she's like, oh my God, like that's a really good performance. So it's like, you see that this is a potential announcement point, not just for the Timberwolves, but also for Anthony Edwards. Like, this is the biggest stage he will have performed on to this point in his career. And I'm sure it means something to him.
Absolutely. Like, he wants this badly. Like, we could see it. Like, we have the beautiful moment now from the first round with him and KD John, and he's looking at him like, I want this. Like, he's talked about his admiration for KD. He's talked about how he wants to be seen as the best. Like, I want to check Devin Booker because I want to be seen as the best shooting guard. He has that personality and that determination where it's like, was it Kevin Garnett who was like, that's 84 Jordan right there. Like, that's what we're seeing him. Outside of him having an uncanny resemblance to him, like, the game does kind of favor. And I know some people are like, that's too much pressure on Ant, but like, Ant lives for that. Like, he goes for the pressure. Like, he wants the big moments. What we saw him do in that game 4 closeout, like, he exploded in the second half as well. When it was time for the game to be done, he was ready. So I can't wait to see this. And also, like, I'm still going back and forth. I have up until the game starts to make my series prediction, but I also wonder how injuries might play a part in this series as well, because the Nuggets were kind of beat up in that game or in that last series as well, especially with Jamal
not beat
Murray
up enough.
I
was going to say, I mean, if you're gonna be, you know, beaten up, you might as well be beaten enough.
That calf didn't stop him 2-game winners at different times. Like,
no, it certainly did not. That guy's a killer. Jamal Murray is an absolute playoff killer. You mentioned the idea of who's guarding Ant. Like, KCP is a really good perimeter defender, but we saw in that first series with LeBron, he can get overpowered, and I think Ant is stronger than him. I think that could be a really difficult matchup for Michael Porter Jr. So do you start with Aaron Gordon on Ant and just say, like, you know, don't worry about anything else, you know, whatever rebounds you grab, whatever, but just you put all your focus on Ant, because I think he's the most natural and probably the best equipped guy to do it. But then, you know, I think he also has to really avoid foul trouble. He's got to be really smart about how he goes about doing this. I'm really curious about, on the other end of this, with Jamal Murray and, you know, Jokic. Like, you know, is Gobert is Gobert going to start on Jokic? Would Jokic play more in the high post, operating out of there, trying to draw Gobert away? If you do that, do you put Cat on him so Gobert can maintain that final line? Do you put, I would assume McDaniels is going to be guarding Murray to begin with. So who do you put Ant on? Like chasing around Porter or KCP off screens, that can be pretty tiring. Like, do you maybe give him a little bit of a break and put him on Gordon? But then, like, where do some of the other matchups, like, feel like you may have to put Cat on Gordon as the guy that Cat can sag off? Like, it's going to be we were talking about Ant. This could be a series where a lot is needed from Ant on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and if Ant is needed for a lot on both sides of the ball, I think of too, like when Drew Holiday was talking about in the playoffs where he's like, I'm really playing defense, y'all. So sometimes the offense, it might trail off a bit because I am really locking in. It is hard for a full game to give everything you have on both sides of the ball. And if the Nuggets can find a way to kind of neutralize Ant, then you're putting more pressure on Cat and McDaniels and Rudy Gobert and Mike. You're putting a lot more pressure on some of the guys who are seen as a little bit more secondary to Ant's ascending star to make buckets, to make plays. So that's one thing for them. And then as for that Jokic matchup, I'm thinking it might be Anthony Towns that starts on him. So Gobert can kind of float, kind of help off a little bit as well from his matchups and just try to be an annoyant. But I think it'll be in the best interest of the Wolves to keep changing that up a bit. Like, at least they do have 3 different bigs to throw at Jokic throughout the game.
I think this is going to be a really potentially big series for Cat, because if you were talking about how much could be needed from Ant on both sides of the ball, and I think there will be, just there are a lot of difficult matchups that just it's going to come down to Ant's going to have to guard one of them. That's going to leave, I think, a bigger onus on Karl Anthony Towns to be like, Ant has talked you up as the most talented scorer on this team, whether he means it or not. He's clearly dapping up his guy and, reminding Cat just how important he is for this team. And Cat is seen as a guy who's had a lot of playoff failure, or at times regular season not being the guy that's expected of his talent. I think this is a really, really potentially important series for Karl Anthony Towns.
Got to stay out of foul trouble. Cannot make dumb decisions in this series, especially against somebody as smart as Jokic. Like, he will try to bait you, get you in the air, do whatever he can to get you in trouble, and Cat cannot fall from it. We've seen in past playoffs, even before Ant called him out at the end of this last series against the Suns. But like, that's been a thing with Karl Anthony Towns, where sometimes he just makes decisions or he fouls because he's out of position. He's just doing things. And in the playoffs, when possessions mean so much more, you can't do that. So yeah, I can't wait for this series to kick off.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really entertaining. Again, game 1 begins on Saturday. All of your coverage, obviously, throughout the playoffs can be found on Locked On NBA. Make sure you are subscribing to, listening to, watching Locked On NBA. Make sure you are watching all of the other channels around the network. Tons and tons of NBA coverage that is still going on 5 days a week. Thanks to everybody for watching, listening, and we will see everybody soon.